Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending today. We are going to wait just about a minute or two and let some of the stragglers come in. So if you can hold on about one more minute, we will get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending. Just a few quick housekeeping items as we get started today. If you have a question during the webinar, just click on Ask a Question below. It's right down here, right below the video. You can also upvote questions from others, and we'll make sure we answer those during the Q&A portion at the very end of the webinar. You can also comment and answer on presenter questions and use the chat box on the right. It should be right over here for you guys. And of course, at the end of this, the recording and replay of the webinar will be available almost immediately as soon as we're done, and we'll get it posted up to our site as well. So really excited to have everybody here today. We're going to talk about the 7 navigational issues that hurt conversions and give you some test ideas and understanding on how to fix those. So let me dive right into the slides and we can get started. All right. So first of all, my name is John MacDonald, and I'm the CEO and founder of The Good. We help e-commerce companies increase their online sales. So our services convert more of a company's existing website traffic into buyers. We do this through what's called conversion rate optimization, and that includes A/B testing and using data science to improve usability of those websites. We've helped brands large and small increase their conversion rates, brands like Nike, Xerox, Adobe, and lots more. We've been doing this for about 9 years now. So we've come across tons and tons of educational facts about navigation that we should really be talking about more often. So we wanted to cover that today during our webinar. And so let's dive right in. We're going to look at and highlight a number of common navigational mistakes that brands make that really just impact their conversions. We'll discuss why those mistakes tend to happen, and we'll also mention some suggested tests that can be run to fix them. And finally, we're going to open it up at the end for your questions. So as I mentioned, you can use the Ask a Question link at the bottom or use the chat on the right. So why are we focusing on navigation today? Well, it's because most brands have issues with their navigation. When we work with new clients, it's one of the first areas we focus our interest in. And that's because it's often a major conversion drop-off point. If someone can't figure out how to reach their goal with your navigational options, they will bounce. So today we're going to review 7 navigation mistakes that are most common in killing conversions. And we're going to offer some suggestions and perhaps alternatives to test on your site. So with that, let's get started. The first navigational issue we see all too often is having too many options in your navigation. Essentially, it gives your visitors analysis paralysis. So let's take this website, for example. It's a national brand we all know. And let's count the navigational options on the home page. And this is without scrolling any further. There are actually several more further down the page. But there are 6 here for people to be thinking about. There's the red bar carousel at the top. There's the top navigation related to all of the different stores that are part of this brand. There's the website content navigation, the e-commerce navigation, the hero image call to action, and more deals below that. The more crowded you make your navigation, especially up in the header at the top level, the greater the cognitive load you're putting on your visitors. Not to mention that if you have a huge navigation, you're just making it more difficult for people to navigate on mobile. So let's look, why does this tend to happen? It's often because there are too many stakeholders contributing simultaneously. It just really adds bloat to the content. So having too many stakeholders involved in understanding your navigation creates a big issue here. We see this all the time. And really, the goal should be to simplify your top navigation and reduce the work for your consumers. A few tests that you should really be thinking about running are, testing simpler top categories, adding more detailed subcategories. So move some of those things you feel like need to be in the main navigation down into a sub navigation. And then incorporating a search right into the page content and making that a main way for people to utilize wayfinding and navigation on your site. And really, if you have a lot of products like Pottery Barn does, a strong search feature can often just be the best solution because people are going to go and start looking for what they need that way, especially if your navigation is creating overload for them. Let's look at our next navigation issue. Using clever but unclear language. Look, branding has a place on your website, no doubt, but it should not confuse your visitors. We find sometimes that businesses just let their branding get in the way of the sales. A common issue we see is using clever but unclear language in the navigation. So thinking about here, what is the flock and what is the tail? What do these mean? And they've put shop to its own navigational item, but you have no idea what you're even looking at here. In our experience, using branded terms like this confuses more often than it doesn't. So what can be done about it? Well, this typically happens by trying to get too unique with your brand voice. The reality is brand voice, again, it's great, but don't let your voice get in the way of serving your customers. And honestly, the navigation is not the place to be unique with your brand voice. To find out if this is affecting you, consider testing more common or everyday terminology in place of branded terms to increase engagement. Maybe using about us and blog would help things instead of those 2 terms, the flock and whatnot. We realize this might not seem as clever, but you can infuse your brand voice in other areas that may be less confusing to potential customers. The third issue we always see is just an unhelpful search feature. Now, I think it really needs to be made clear that search should be considered a navigation, and your users are going to use it as such. So a search feature that produces unclear or less helpful results can create unnecessary friction. Is it clear where visitors can search, or is it hidden on your site? Columbia does a great job of putting it smack dab in their top navigation on the right there. Pretty easy for users to find. That's a common location for search on e-commerce websites, so that's great. But often they fail in other ways. Try your search out. Does it show the right results when you search? Make sure that it's effective. Search for items and categories as well as a variety of terms for your products. Are they consistently pulling up the right items? It's not enough to simply have a search feature. You have to ensure that it works well. So nothing is more frustrating than trying to find some specific search with a search bar and it fails. And lastly, we really want to make sure you ensure you get good results with a fuzzy search. So try to search on misspellings, or in the example here, look up shows instead of snow and see what items get used in here. It should not just be a product listing, perhaps maybe other relative items. So a weak search feature can sometimes be the result of just using an out-of-the-box tool or a plugin that hasn't been fine-tuned. It's not enough to just put search on your site. You have to work with what the results are, especially the results pages. So again, try your search out. Does it show the right results? Are you asking consumers to test it out? And perhaps watch their experience as they do so. So how do you overcome this? Well, I would test using an autocomplete tool on the search. So, what this does is it gives visitors a way to understand if their search is likely to pull up a result. It doesn't make them go to a results page first. You can consider testing different search bar layouts and even locations. We talked a little bit earlier about perhaps putting a search bar in the content of your page, and that's an option as well. Issue number 4, limiting menu items to a single category. So we see this quite often. So for example, here's a company that actually is doing it quite well. In this instance, subcategories like hiking, trail running, they cross both categories, while items like dresses and skirts don't. However, you can see here that women and men is the example, right? So women's on top has dresses and skirts, but it's not in the men below. But they do have mid-layers, jackets, pants and shorts, things that would cross those barriers. So thinking about where you can incorporate additional items in your sub-navigation is going to be key. So why do some businesses fail to include these relevant subcategories on multiple areas of their navigation? Well, this can often be due to using out-of-the-box features that come with the e-commerce platform, or perhaps a limited planning of the site structure up front. So look for subcategories that can fit under multiple categories. Test inclusion of those subcategories that can reasonably fit and try it out, right? Nothing's going to tell you whether it's working more than running perhaps a couple of different variants of your navigation and seeing what works best. Issue number 5, not including recently viewed items throughout your site. So for a variety of reasons, visitors are going to want to find a recently viewed item. And perhaps they're going to use this in a way that, like they do compare, to ensure compatibility with what they're looking at now. It's a missed opportunity to leave this navigation option off of your product pages. And I want to make it clear too that your main navigation, you're probably recognizing a theme by now, isn't the only point of navigation. Remind visitors that the other items they've recently seen interest in are available. This is one of the more common mistakes. Obviously, it won't apply to all brands, but if you're simply relying on previous activities, the chances for converting these visitors rises dramatically. So consider testing a recently viewed items plugin that works for your platform or developing your own. But it's really a necessity that you have this. So one of the things we often test is adding this to different types of pages. So instead of just thinking about product detail pages, you can add to your category pages or other key pages throughout your site and give people more options to convert. You might be noticing a trend here again, but your main navigation is not the only navigation to consider. There are lots of types of navigation, and most of them get overlooked. So don't limit your navigation to only your header. Alternatives, substitutes, add-ons, accessories to a selected product can all help consumers find the exact product that's right for them, and then provide a great adjacent product experience. So you can suggest complementary products on your product detail pages and other key pages. And you can also provide a pathway back to the category, perhaps, from your product detail page that makes it simple for them to find other related products. Now, it's only natural to think of your primary navigation as the only navigation on the site. But ask yourself, a product page, for example, are you showing visitors similar items, related items, and more? So one of the things that's important to think about here is using a product recommendation engine. Most of the ones that come built in with platforms are honestly not that great. There's certain third parties out there that have great platforms you can look at. In addition, really you should I recommend testing different product recommendation engines to find the one that's best for you. Issue number 7, lack of a clear website taxonomy, meaning a clear organizational structure for your website's content. Now, when I say unclear, I'm talking about in the eyes of your visitors. A lot of brands believe that they are clear, but they really just have a context that their visitors do not. And this can lead to a complicated organizational structure. Without a clear website taxonomy, it will be difficult for visitors to accomplish the only 2 reasons that they're on your website. The first is to understand if your product or service can solve their pain or need. And second, to convert, meaning purchase or find out where to purchase as quickly and easily as possible. A clear organizational structure for your content is also essential to wayfinding, helping the user get that information and get where they want to go very quickly. And it's quite beneficial for search engine optimization as well. So there's multiple reasons to do this. So make sure this is that you have a relevant taxonomy to your visitor shopping on the site, not to your brand or company. And ask yourself, are your categories or subcategories done as physical objects or nouns? So you think about like boots. Another great tip here is setting up your filters and your sub-navigations to help refine using different facets of the physical objects. So adjectives like colors, blue, for instance, will really help people understand how they're sorting and getting through your site quickly. Now, one of the things we like to do when it comes to navigations is something called card sorting. If you're not familiar with that, it's taking all of the content on your site, just putting it on note cards. There's a lot of digital tools for this too, but it really helps to start physical first. Write them all out on note cards and then start organizing that content as quickly and easily as possible. So, in summary, the secret to e-commerce growth really comes from first studying every click and movement that your consumers are taking, and then tailor that navigation in a way that is structured for how they want to use your website. And there's tons of things that are overlooked when optimizing your site for conversions, but the biggest one we see is navigation. And hopefully we've given you plenty of food for thought today about how you can improve your conversions simply by taking a little bit deeper dive at your navigation. If you need help with your navigation or just want to talk about converting more of your existing traffic into buyers, you can schedule 15 minutes to chat with me. Just go to thegood.com/contact. And if you haven't already, I highly suggest signing up for our weekly insight emails, where we break down the top conversion killers and how to solve them on a weekly basis. You can do so at thegood.com/sign-up or click the green button down at the bottom, the Insight Email Sign Up button. It'll take you right there. All right, let's look and see if we got some questions here. Spend a few minutes doing that. So David asks, where do you stand on whether or not to have home in the top navigation? Well, home does not necessarily need to be in the navigation. This is actually something that we see quite often. And it happens most on smaller brands, of course, but having home in your navigation is taking up a spot that does not need to be there. Meaning you should have limited options in your main navigation. And if you're taking up one of those spots with home, you're really wasting that space. Typical convention, click the logo in the top left corner of the site. It would take you back to the home page. Most users know to do that these days and will follow that convention. So there's really no need to have home in your navigation. That leads me actually to another great question here, which is there a maximum or minimum number of items one should have in their top navigation? Well, as I was just saying, having too many items can cause problems. And typically we want to maintain no more than 5 items in your top navigation. If you can get it down to 4, even better. Most brands who have a lot of products, that's just not possible for them. So want to make sure that you are really thinking about what your consumers are looking for. So for instance, putting your blog in your main navigation is probably not going to be that effective for converting people into a customer. The reason is the blog is a great way to bring customers in, do some content marketing, explain more details about your company, your offering, your products. However, it's really not normally part of this conversion path, meaning that it might be top of funnel, but as they start working their way down, it's not something usually they're going to want to look at. Putting that in your footer, or even better, working that content in throughout your site is going to be key. So really focus on having 4, a max of 5 items, and keeping it relevant to what the consumer is looking to do on your site, as opposed to what the brand wants to communicate. And I think that's an important point I've made a few times today. Looks like there's one more question here. Does it matter which order navigational items are organized into? It does. I think what's really important here is that you think about, again, what your consumer is looking to accomplish on the site. Best way to understand that is to do user testing and actually have consumers who fit your ideal customer profile go through your site and understand exactly what they're trying to do as they go through your site. Then organize the navigation to help push them further down the funnel on that conversion path and give them the easiest way possible to take that next step. And the best way to do that is put those main conversion points up front in the navigation and go from there. So, anything that is relevant to consumers buying a product or solving the 2 problems that they're at your site to do. The first is understanding if your product or service can solve their pain or need and completing that research. And 2 is to buy that product or service or understand where to buy it as quickly and easily as possible. So it's really important that you make those 2 tasks first and foremost in the navigation. And then if you have room left over after that and those 4 or 5 items, perhaps work in blog or about us or something else. But typically speaking about yourself in your main navigation it's rarely going to get clicked, and it's not a good effective use of the navigational items. So put those at the end of your navigation. Right. Are there any other questions here? And if there are, I'm happy to answer them. We'll give it a minute and see if any others come up. Otherwise, as I mentioned, I do encourage you to sign up for our weekly emails or to schedule a few minutes to chat if you want to talk about your particular navigation. And again, you can click the green button down below the video here to sign up for those insights, or you can just go to our website and go to the contact page and fill out the form, and one of our team members will get back to you about scheduling a time to chat as quickly as we can. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions come up, so we're going to wrap up the webinar for now. I really appreciate your time and spending a few minutes with me today. I'm going to come back on the video here real quick and just say thank you for attending. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you at our future webinar. We'll be doing one of these generally about every quarter. And again, if you have any questions, anything comes up, don't hesitate to get in touch. Happy to meet with you and discuss. All right, great. Well, hopefully you found today helpful. Have a great afternoon, and I will talk with you all soon.